All right, let's talk about building the architecture of trust. Today, we're going to break down exactly what it takes to create AI systems that aren't just powerful, but are actually safe, secure, and reliable. This is a huge topic, so let's just dive right in. So it really all comes down to this one big question. I mean, we see AI doing all this incredible stuff, but how do we know we can trust its answers? How do we make sure that trust is built in from the ground up? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack together. And we're going to tackle this by looking at three core pillars. First, the foundation, making sure our data is rock solid. Second, we'll build the fortress. That's all about how we protect that data. And third, we'll cover the law, which is navigating all those crucial roles around compliance and privacy. Then, of course, we'll wrap it all up with the key stuff you need to remember. Okay, let's get into our first pillar, the foundation. We're talking about data integrity. Because look, before you can even dream of training a trustworthy AI, you absolutely need trustworthy data. It's the bedrock. Everything else is built on top of this. So what does good data even mean, really? Well, it breaks down into four parts. First, accuracy. You've got to kick out all the misinformation and just plain wrong data. Then there's completeness. No huge gaping holes in your information. If you get either of these wrong, you could build an AI to screen resumes that just misses the best people because your data was garbage. Next, you need integrity monitoring, which is like a security guard for your data, making sure no one's messing with it. And finally, data lineage. Think of it like a complete background check on your data, tracking its entire life story from where it came from to how it was changed. And this right here is the golden rule of this whole pillar. It's just that simple. If your data is bad, your AI will be bad. You can't trust it. The quality of what you put in, 100% determines the reliability of what you get out. All right, let's move on to pillar number 2. This is where we build the fortress. See, once you have that amazing, trusted data, you have to protect it. And the absolute best way to do that is with a strategy called defense in depth. Just imagine you're building a medieval castle. You don't just have one wall, right? You've got walls, a moat, guards, the whole shebang. So what do these layers actually look like in the real world? Well, first up is identity and access management, or IAM. That's your gatekeeper, deciding who gets a key and who doesn't. Next is encryption, which basically scrambles the data so it's complete gibberish to anyone who shouldn't see it. Using a tool like AWS Key Management Service, KMS, is a game changer here because it gives you one central place to manage all your keys. Then you've got your network controls. These are your firewalls, your castle walls. And finally, you have monitoring with tools like CloudTrail and CloudWatch. These are like your 24/7 security cameras, logging every single thing that happens. And here's the most important part of this whole idea. It's all about resilience. No single security measure is ever perfect. So the whole point of defense in depth is that if one layer gets breached, let's say someone steals a password, the attacker still has to get past the firewall and deal with encrypted data. The other layers are there to hold the line. Okay, on to our third and final pillar, the law. Look, having the world's strongest technical fortress is great, but it's not enough. You have to operate within the legal and ethical rules of the road, and that's where compliance and privacy come into play. Now, to even begin to understand compliance, we have to know what we're trying to protect, and that starts with PII, which stands for Personally Identifiable Information. It's pretty much what it sounds like, any little piece of data that you can use to figure out who a specific person is. We're talking names, email addresses, you name it. And then, within that PII category, there's an even more sensitive type of data, PHI, or Protected Health Information. This is the stuff that deals with a person's health, like their medical records. And as you can probably guess, the rules for protecting this kind of information are incredibly strict. So why should you care so much about all this? Well, because failing to protect this data isn't just a bad look. It can lead to absolutely massive regulatory fines. We're talking about penalties that can seriously hurt an entire organization. So what are these rulebooks we have to follow? Well, a few of the big ones you'll hear about are NIST, which is for U.S. federal systems, and HIPAA, which is all about that health information. And then over in Europe, the big one is GDPR. It protects the privacy of EU citizens, but its rules can apply to companies all over the world. You know, if you look at all these different frameworks, there's one core idea that runs through all of them: transparency. Organizations have a duty to be totally upfront and clear with people. You have to tell them what data you're collecting, you have to explain how you're using it, and you've got to put it all in a privacy policy that people can actually understand. It's really a cornerstone of doing things right. Okay, wow, we have covered a ton of ground. So let's just pause for a second and boil this all down to the absolute essentials you need to walk away with. So let's lock these in. When you think integrity, think accuracy and lineage. When you think confidentiality, think encryption. For monitoring, think of those logging tools, CloudTrail and CloudWatch. Compliance, that's your rulebooks, NIST, HIPAA, GDPR. And the big idea that holds it all together, defense in depth. These are the pieces you need to build an AI system you can actually trust. So we end up right back where we started, but now you see the whole picture. Trust in AI isn't some kind of magic. It's engineered. It's built on a foundation of data integrity, protected by layers of security, and guided by the law. So the real question now is, how are you going to use these pillars to build AI that's not just powerful, but is truly built to last?